Hello and welcome to the Remote Work Movement podcast. My name is Gonçalo Hall, and today my guest in the podcast is Radina Nedyalkova, psychologist, international HR specialist, certified career consultant, remote advisor, and passionate travel. Also, Radina is the founder, training, and LinkedIn coach at Vox Advisory, a company based in Dublin but working with clients worldwide. Radina is an amazing professional and person. We collaborated in previous projects together, and she's just killing it in everything she does. She's really, really amazing. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she was also part of LinkedIn as talent acquisition partner and also Airbnb, yes, the Airbnb, as global recruiter, besides many other amazing experiences in several outstanding companies. This conversation was really amazing, and you will learn three key things. What's important when you are looking for a job, how to prepare and thrive in remote interviews, and why companies should hire remote workers. I am really, really excited to share with you all Radina's knowledge, so please welcome the outstanding Radina Nedyalkova to the podcast. Radina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, I want you to present yourself and tell me a little bit more of what you do for a living right now.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So my background is psychology, human resources, and recruitment. I had the chance to work in several countries, to live in them as well. And during the last 7 years, I worked with LinkedIn and Airbnb and another American company. But most recently, in beginning of this year, actually, I started my own company called Vox Advisory. So what I do now is everything but recruitment. So my focus is on one side, the B2C element. So I help professionals worldwide with some career advices from the recruitment perspective. So I do help them with their, obviously, LinkedIn profile and leveraging the biggest professional platform. I help them with their resume and also with the interview process on its own. And then my other part of the business is more focused on training and advisory for different type of companies. Some of them are remote, others are thinking about going remote, and third are just the standard office-based companies. And what I do is basically I make sure they understand the complexity of the human resources field. And instead of hiring a full-time person, they have different consultations month after month with me on different subjects such as employer branding, talent acquisition best practices, and other HR bits and pieces. And then we part our ways.
That is amazing. And we will speak a little bit about everything you just mentioned. So I think you are definitely the right person to be here. But first, I always like to go a little bit back in time. And I saw that you were somewhere between psychology, HR, and then also tourism. I think you even started to work in tourism. And so what was the thing in HR that sent you to HR and now working in HR for some time and you are a specialist in HR instead of the tourism field where you started?
That's an awesome question. And honestly, no one has asked me. So thank you so much for bringing the topic. I really love traveling. That has been always in my heart. Even my mom says that I've been conceived on a trip to the Czech Republic. So I've obviously started, traveling from very early age. But I've always wanted to work with people, very closely with people, to understand their motivation and help them to find themselves. So psychology and HR, they walk hand in hand, and I felt the human resources path, particularly talent acquisition and recruitment, were the areas that resonate mostly with me in terms of personality and character and purpose. So I actually felt, okay, my dream would be one day to have my own bed and breakfast, but until then I want to make sure I positively impact the life and the career of the people around me.
So is that dream still up? Are you still hoping maybe even to mix it up, maybe a co-living space or something where you can mix the remote work and meet remote workers with the tourism side?
That's actually a very fun idea, and I would totally be up for something like that, because I do feel there is a human element that we need to keep when we're working remotely. And I actually now this year I'm spending a lot more time with people versus in my previous job where I was office based. And it's so funny, but I really feel that we can make a positive contribution to each other, whether it's remote or virtually occasionally or face to face. I do feel that there is a way to combine these two dreams one day.
I think that's a really good point, and a misconception I face lots of times, which is when you work remotely, you are alone. And since I work remotely, I never met so many interesting people in my life. And the amount of people I met this year compared with before when I was in office, always with the same people, there is no comparison. I met 10 times more people. I think remote work always 10x everything for the good and for the bad. I will start now entering a little bit on the individual side. So I would like to speak more about the people side of and the hiring and the company side. Most of the people I know really want to land a remote job. It's their dream. They want this freedom. They want this lifestyle, not exactly to be a digital nomad, but just to have the freedom to work whatever they happen to be. But everyone is finding that it's really, really hard to land a remote job. And the first question is, why is it so hard to get a remote job nowadays?
I will definitely speak from the perspective of the employer, because I faced this challenge when I was still working in the large tech companies. And one very human emotion is fear, and not knowing what to expect, not being okay to let go of control. And there is a perception when the person is not based in the office and you can't physically see them or interact with them, you can't really understand how they're doing, if they're working or if they're doing something else. So on one side, it's pure human fear of letting go of the control. On another hand, there is a bit more practical element related to legal and tax implications. Now, we are moving very quickly in this environment, and there are already organizations. I'm actually partnering with one of them based in the UK, a small startup that is really taking upon themselves to resolve this issue and really facilitate the process in regards to setting up an entity or just informing the companies of what is the best approach in order to hire more remote individuals. Because I completely understand that, yes, certain countries have very, very specific regulations. It's very bureaucratical process. So I totally get that part of the puzzle. But we are getting there slowly and steadily. There is more awareness, more best practices, and more keen barristers, legal advisors that are working on this topic.
Definitely. I agree with the legal side. But one thing you mentioned, and I face that every day because I also try to help companies to go remote, not also, but yeah, is that fear is definitely a big point in here. And we should be very aware of that. How can we, that are very active in promoting the remote lifestyle, the remote work inside the companies, how can we reduce the fear that the companies have in hiring remote employees?
I believe some of the remote friendly and the remote only companies are really leading the way. They are sharing a lot of good practices, a lot of examples. A lot of managers and directors on high level positions are talking about the struggle and the change of the mindset. I think the more we raise the awareness, the more we talk openly about, yes, the good, the bad, the ugly. We can't talk only about, the dream of working from a beach. We all know that that's not the reality. But I think one thing that we can do on a massive scale is really raise the awareness, whether it's webinars, whether it's creating conversations on Slack, so online and offline, and really creating ambassadors. I know it all starts with the people, and then at some point, hopefully, there'll be a bit more political force on that part as well. Because if there are certain regulations in place, obviously the companies and the individuals would feel much more secure to explore this path. But that's in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I agree. And I see Grow Remote specific in Ireland doing an amazing job, and they're quite strong in Portugal as well. And they're doing an outstanding job in promoting and finding the legal solutions to implement remote work. So kudos for them. I have to interview them. They've never been here. I want I want to go a little bit back to the individual side, because then we'll speak more about the companies. But on the individual side, because I know I'm approached by thousands of people in my LinkedIn on, please find me a remote job, please hire me. So I want to help them out, and I want you to help me to help them out. So I'll start with, what are the differences that the candidates should take into account when sending a job application for a remote job versus an in-office job? So in-office job, everyone does more or less the same. send a CV and that's pretty much it. Sometimes they send a letter or not, we'll see. But what are some things that they can do in regards to the application to increase at least a little bit their chances to have a remote job in the future?
I'm glad you asked me that, because actually I believe that the beginning should be not so much with educating them about how to look for jobs, but it's more starting from their own resume, their own story. If you've never been in the remote space, if you've never worked from home or in any kind of different setup, it's unlikely or it's very difficult to land the job quickly. You have to be incredibly persistent and resilient. Now, one thing that I would advise is to really focus on ensuring that your resume corresponds in the best possible way, without lying, obviously, or without creating a story out of nothing, but to relate to the profile of the person that the company is looking for. So you start with your resume, you really build up, and you try to translate, okay, if you've always been in an office environment, what else have you done that could potentially relate to the environment of a remote worker? Is it going to be the case that you've worked on some additional projects, or you have volunteered, or you spent time traveling? These small things matter, and they matter a lot. But to be honest with you, the biggest difference is the fact that the soft skills for success in a remote space are 100% different to the skills that an office employee would need, or a traditional employee. It doesn't matter if you're in an office or not. So you start with the skills, you build up your awareness, you obviously try to build a community around you. And the best way, to be honest, this is actually the similarity between the two approaches in terms of applications, is referrals. The number one source that is working well is not you applying for a job and praying to get the feedback, is you identifying someone who works there, who can prepare you and who can put you forward as a referral.
I have so many questions regarding this, so let's go. So we talked first that it's very unlikely that a company hire you for a full-time remote position if you don't have experience working remotely. And most of the HR managers with whom I speak totally agree with you. But most of the people never work remotely as well. So we have here a problem, right? I wonder if is freelancing a solution to show up not only your work, but that you also work remotely. Because when you freelance, you have to work, you have to manage your own work, and you have to provide a solution. So is freelancing or starting as a freelance a good solution to later end up working full time for a company?
You're 100% right. It's catch 22. It's really difficult because you might have never had exposure to being in a remote setup, or you never asked for it. Yes, I do believe that you are right in regards to the freelancing piece. That could be one route to success. You can trial something. You can try working on a variety of projects within your realm. It's a fact that certain professions would have a bit more exposure. Let's say if you're a digital marketeer already, or a salesperson, or customer support, you are much more likely to find something that would lead you to the remote space. Now it could be a bit more different for, let's say, financial structures or HR professionals, financial professionals or HR specialists. Now you have to be also realistic with your expectations. You can pivot into a different career, but again, that would require time. So one part is definitely becoming a freelancer. Another part is really having this challenging discussion with your current employer, if you are working right now for someone, whether there are some alternatives that you can trial for a certain amount of time. Nowadays the power is with the candidates, and a lot of candidates don't realize that. And you can really test the ground, you can see what the options are as long as you open your mouth. No one is going to come and ask you, hey, do you want to work remotely? No, you have to drive this change. And sometimes you'll be surprised. Sometimes employers would be open, in order to retain this particular person, they'll be open to do some kind of compromise solution. So give it a go. That would be my advice.
Yes, I totally agree. And you also mentioned networking and finding people inside the companies. Is it easier to find a job through networking than job boards? We see a lot of job boards now specifically for remote work, like we work remotely. I think it's the biggest by now. Is it easier to find the remote companies first, for example, with where you would like to work, instead of just applying in job boards? what will increase more your chances of succeeding?
I would bet that in order for you to distinguish yourself from the crowd, so from everyone who applies directly to these jobs, I would say not so many people would think about other ways of getting their foot through the door. So I would totally advise spend a bit more time to research the team, investigate the team, even alumni, so people who have left this company. So LinkedIn is always a great resource purely from a research perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that if you send, hundred of exactly the same emails to different people, you'll get a response. Personalization, building this relationship, it might take you a couple of months to even warm up to someone, but then they would feel much more comfortable putting you out there because you are competing against a huge number of people. So if you don't think outside of the box, if you rely on the traditional ways, and posting and praying is what we call it in the HR world, it's just not going to happen because you most likely you're not the next Gary V. I mean, hopefully you are, but in the end of the day, we all have to be realistic with our expectations. So definitely the referrals would, in my opinion, would bring you closer to where you want to be. That doesn't mean you should ignore the job boards, and there's some amazing and very authentic job boards out there. It's just I feel this is more of a passive way of looking for a job.
Yes, a lot of people think this is a numbers game. In your opinion, on your side, in HR side, is it still a numbers game? If I send 200 applications that are average, is it better or worse than send 50 that are really well thought where I spend some time? What, in your opinion, is the best way to go there? Is it numbers or is it more focus on the quality?
That'll be always the chicken and the egg question. I would say again, it really depends on your situation, your specialty, because certain professions would have completely different outcome to others. So I wouldn't put everyone under the same circumstances. I would say yes, it is still a numbers game, but you also have to have an element of proactive attitude, an element of luck. I always keep saying about myself, yes, I've sent over 250 applications when I arrived in Ireland. It took me 4 months to get a job, and then LinkedIn reached out to me. So serendipity happens when you least expect it. So I believe from that point of view, the volume will bring you to a state of mind where you're okay with the no's. And then one day, this one company would express interest in you, and things will happen for a reason. Now, call me superstitious, call me, with different mindset, but I honestly, things have happened to me exactly in this way.
Yeah, for me, surprisingly, it was more thinking outside the box. So most of the jobs I got was always by thinking outside the box and doing things the unusual way where nobody goes. So where everybody sent CVs, I went and met the people, or I went to the events. I know they were there, and I always met the people there. So I prefer the unconventional way, but I'm also an unconventional person. So yeah, that's just the way it is.
That's it exactly. And the more we share about different approaches, the more people will trial them. Now, what has worked for you might not work for me, and vice versa. But there isn't one size fits all. If you're expecting that the same CV, the same cover letter, and the same email would have exactly the same result every time, I mean, no, that's ridiculous. Albert Einstein has said that. Like, if you try the same stuff over and over, you can't expect a different result.
I agree. And the other question I have is that I see LinkedIn is getting more and more important, and you work for LinkedIn, so you are a little bit biased in here. But does CV still matter in the application process, or are recruiters looking more into the CV, into the LinkedIn, if you post something there or not, and your profile? What matter the most? I know you will say both, but in the balance, what do you think it's more important nowadays?
And you're right when you pointed out that I'm biased. I'm absolutely biased. LinkedIn above all. But no, joke aside, I do feel both are important because they can serve different purpose. Now, LinkedIn is much more dynamic, and it's more like your portfolio. The CV is actual track of record. So the CV can be a lot more detailed, longer, and the LinkedIn profile can be more focused around your current situation, your current state of your professional career and your personality. I think they can complement each other. And a lot of people think that they are replaceable, but I honestly believe that one complements the other. So you have to have different keywords or similar keywords, but particularly for certain tech companies, they have been trying to implement more AI and machine learning. Now, you'll be surprised, there aren't so many tools that are so sophisticated and refined. So don't be afraid when you're applying, or that's exactly my message to all of the people out there. Usually humans read your CVs, but if your CVs are not written in the best possible way, or if your LinkedIn is not leveraged and there are no skills or specific concrete details that would attract the attention, then you're lost anyway. So my honest response to you is both are needed, and you can leverage both in different ways.
That's amazing, because my next question was exactly in that direction: is does the CV design still matters? Because on my side, I feel that more and more we have more and more automation and more programs reading the information in our CV, and in there the design doesn't matter anything, because it's almost machine learning, AI working there. So I was wondering if the design still matters, or if, for example, downloading the CV that LinkedIn provides you and making some changes would be enough for having a CV that is readable for the companies.
Here I'm giving my 5 cents from both the recruiter perspective and me being an advisor. I don't feel that the design doesn't matter. I think it really, really matters how you write down your CV and your LinkedIn profile, because you tell a unique story. Now, of course, that certain companies would have very rigid way of application form, let's say. So you have to put, only the key facts and figures. But in general, I do feel that your resume and your LinkedIn have incredible power from a formatting perspective, and you can express your personality as well. So as someone who has read numerous CVs every single day, the ones that I remembered are the ones that people have put a bit more effort and time in, and they stood in my head. Even if we didn't hire these people, that made an impression on me. So I would much rather go with someone who is creative, thinking outside of the box, not necessarily, having incredibly colorful CV, but more telling me a story. I don't want just rough facts and figures.
Interesting. That's super interesting. And besides the CV and the LinkedIn profile, where are recruitings looking for more information about the candidate? Are they going to the social media pages? Are they seeing if they wrote anything on LinkedIn, both posts or articles? What are the first three places where recruiters look for information even before they contact some candidate?
I'll be honest with you, recruiters don't have time for proper investigation. Now, we're talking about, I'm coming from volume hiring. I'm not coming from very refined technical hiring, so I can't speak about all of the recruiters. I would say only from my experience and talking to other colleagues in this branch, is that it is pretty challenging to find time to do additional investigation. However, the hiring managers, they are incredibly curious, and they're much more precise and much more focused on the smaller details, because they want to obviously hire the right person for their team. So particularly in my previous companies, most of the hiring managers I've been working with have done additional check the person, even if it was just Googling their name and Googling their photo, to try and find a bit more information. So yeah, your digital or online footprint has to be very, very thoughtful, and you have to be careful what information you post out there. I don't think that's a bad practice. I think it's absolutely normal. As human beings, we are curious, and if information is public, I mean, who is to blame? Not the one who is looking for it, the one who's posting it.
Yes, exactly. I just wonder if by posting articles about your specialty, imagine a person from marketing that is posting one time a week, like Gary Vee style, is posting his content out there. Does that matter? I think that would be the question I was trying to figure out. Does it matter that people are putting content out there? And is it something that the recruiters are looking when they have time?
Yes, absolutely. And as I said, for me, it would be like whenever I had time, or whenever I was hiring for a bit more sophisticated role, and let's say I didn't have such a volume amount of applications, I would totally try to identify a bit more information, feedback about this person, and writing articles, being present and sharing your opinion, you know, to certain extent. Obviously now there are boundaries. I mean, if we're talking about expressing political interest or religious interest, now these are stuff that we can't touch on. It's out of reach, and it should.
I will add food preferences, because I feel that food preferences are the new religion.
Is it. Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
Be careful, be careful. I feel there's a whole religious aura around food preferences, specific being vegan, be vegetarian, liking meat. Be careful.
That is interesting. I might need to revise how I appear on Google. Okay, lovely. Thank you for sharing this.
It's the food wars now.
Wow,
Yeah,
good to
yeah,
know.
it's true. I see more and more discussion, very similar to political discussion around the food preferences and saving the world, etc. So I think that's the new politics.
Wow, I see. Wow, interesting.
If and people feel very strong about this, so it's something that I, yeah. And you see a lot of CVs. Well, not anymore, but you used to see, and there is a lot of mistakes people do. What are the most common mistakes you see people doing when applying for a job?
Yeah, and I love talking about that, and I'm really trying, and probably I should even do an article or record myself talking about that, because small things matter absolutely, and a lot of people are either too hasty, or they are sending their resume so many times that they absolutely forget to check it or update it. Some of the common mistakes are lots of punctual or grammar mistakes. Now, English is not my first language either, but if you're sending an official document and you're expecting an official response and a serious response, you have to be also serious about that. So, grammar, punctual mistakes. Another very common error is different shift, different font, too colorful, or choosing a design that is not really friendly, or there isn't any information that is helpful. Um, a lot of the times people try to add links that are broken, or they're too long, or they give unnecessary amount of details, such as their full address, their ID card, their family status and date of birth, and things like that, that are outdated. They shouldn't be on your resume anymore. There are loads of protections for you, so people shouldn't worry about that piece. So the idea of the resume is track of record and your history, and it the track of record should be told as a story, through your skills, through your achievements, and you should keep it as simple as that. If you have too long, I've seen 5-6 pages of a resume. I mean, I don't want to read a book, nor I have the time to read a book. So short and sweet, but with the right amount of details. If you have portfolio, link to your portfolio. If you believe your LinkedIn can add more value, add a link to your LinkedIn profile. That's it.
Speaking about grammar, I want to put it out there. There is a cool tool called Grammarly where you can actually check all your grammar, spelling mistakes. So there is no excuses to make grammar mistakes, or there is just no excuses. Most of the program is free. You can buy the premium version, but Grammarly is amazing. So everyone listening, please just install Grammarly. It's just a add-in on Google Chrome, or you can go to their page, and they're amazing. So shout out for them. They saved my life a lot of times.
Totally, 100% for that as well. It's on your mobile phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, everywhere. So you're totally right. There is no excuse for making these mistakes anymore.
Totally agree. So we sent the CV. We have an amazing LinkedIn page. We are finally going for the interviewing. And I would like to know if you have just a couple of tips for people interviewing, because all the interviews are different. So there is not like one size fits all, and everyone is different. I've been through a lot of really, really different processes. So I want to know just a couple of tips for someone doing interviews, like a must do in all the interviews that are made by video, like we are talking right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that sounds as a cliche, but research and preparation. I mean, I can't stress enough how important it is for the recruiter to identify someone that is different from the crowd. And if you just quote the standard facts about a certain company, you really don't stand out. The best thing for your interview is do a bit of research, check the profile of the person you're talking to, find some common ground, find some interesting articles, videos, even some nice material from the company that is out of, hey, you're just amazing brand, I love your products, you're very successful. I mean, these are the usual stuff that we hear as recruiters. The second piece of the puzzle is something that I have embraced fully, and I feel that it's incredibly important to be vulnerable. and to be a human being, not to be too polished, not to tell the recruiter what they want to hear or what they expect to hear. Be yourself, be your authentic self, make mistakes, laugh, show your personality, show your professional side, but really act like a human being, act like how you want to be perceived, because we all put a social mask, totally. And even as a recruiter, I have done that. But for me, there is nothing better than converting an interview, which is a stressful process for both sides, into a nice, pleasant discussion between two grown-ups.
Yes, I totally agree. I want to defend people though, because there is a common question from the recruiters that really pisses me off, and it's the following. Usually it is, what are your biggest faults or what are you worst at? And I was like, what the hell should I say? Like, what's your advice when recruiters ask you that? Because yeah, there people still ask me this, and I know my fault, but I want to be vulnerable, but I don't want to give away my whole game. So what is the right answer for that stupid question? I'm sorry someone still asks these questions, but I really feel that there's...
Oh, no, absolutely. Yes, I know how you feel. I've been there, and I actually do training sessions for interviewers, and I absolutely encourage them not to ask anything like that, not to ask about strengths or weaknesses, because people will fake it until they make it. I mean, there is a reason why there is a saying like that. Yes, a lot of recruiters use either outdated or irrelevant or just weird questions, and I'm not going to defend them at all. I mean, there are good people and there are bad people. I mean, that's the reality. But yes, you still have to be vulnerable. But in the end of the day, this question is aimed to reveal your maturity, your self-awareness, and whether you learn from your mistakes. So once you know the reason why the other person is asking this question, it will be a bit easier for you to figure out what exactly is all right to say. Yes, I have struggled with time management. So you put things into perspective. You say things in the past. Yes, I've struggled with time management, which was a feedback that I've received from some of my managers. What I have done after that, after receiving this feedback, is putting in place a much better structure so that I keep my time management. So you convert this negative question into a learning curve, because you admit that you make mistakes. All of us admit that and should admit that because we're humans. B, you showcase that you are mature and knowledgeable enough to learn from this mistake.
Cool.
So that's the best case.
So I work too hard or I'm too perfectionist are not the right answers there.
Totally not. No.
Because that's a common answer to a common question. Oh, I work too hard. I always give 200%. Sometimes I end up tired. It's very, very bad.
And if I was your recruiter, I would ask, what do you think about work-life balance then?
Yes, because things are changing now.
Yeah.
Things are really changing, and we see companies and people focusing more on the work-life balance. To finish this personal part, I wonder, because you are out there, I'm also out there, and I see a lot of students struggling. So when we are 18, we have to choose what what we want to do in the future. I would say 90% of us have no idea. I had no idea until I was 25. But to someone who took a random degree and they know that that's not what they want to do in life, but they want to work remotely and they are trying to find their passion, what are some suggestions you have, both to find something that they would like to do, but also maybe some low entry barrier jobs that there is a lot of people looking for them and there is not enough demand? Maybe a balance between both would be ideal, right? Do you have some suggestions for people that are feeling lost and are trying to find their way into the work world?
Yes, and that's $1 million question. The first thing you need to admit to yourself is, what do I really like? What does make me happy? Identify, and even if you're 18, if you're 35, if you're 65, there is one thing you should know, and it is what really makes my day, what really makes me feel positive, really energizes me, and it helps me be closer to who I am. Yes, the good news are that nowadays the formal education is not the same and it doesn't have the same value like it was 5-10 years ago. Nowadays we live in an environment where you can sign up for a 5-day course and there you go, you have a certificate, you can start coding, and that's absolutely amazing. Use that. use that. Make a thorough research, talk to your people, ask them about what do they feel makes you happy, what is their recommendation, knowing you from a different angle. uh, Summarize this feedback, realize how that would be translated into an actual work on an actual project or a freelancing gig. But without you asking yourself honestly, asking the people around you and doing the investigation, no one is going to do it for you. No one is going to hold your hand. No one is going to help you out. You have to help yourself out. So there are multiple paths, and thank God for the gig economy, because now we can be an Uber driver during the day, a teacher or a lecturer online during the evenings, and then teach kids piano over the weekends. I mean, no one cares about what exactly you're doing. It's all about purpose. It's all about what makes you happy. You just need to figure out a way to translate it and be bold, be brave. I never imagined myself at the age of 32 working for my own brand. That wasn't how I planned stuff, and it happened, and it's utterly amazing. And then one thing triggers another and another and another, and you end up in the place where you want to be.
My story is very similar actually to what you said. So when I was 25, I figured out that I was good at solving problems in businesses. But so I found marketing and I started to study marketing. But I was also very bored in university, so I quit all my degrees. But then I started working because I need money at 25, right? And I was working for a while, but I started working in sports data in that time. And when I did 30, there was a couple of events because I was very comfortable. I was working in Germany, so I was super comfortable in my life, getting good money, but I felt that I was not fulfilled. So I had two choices: I would stay there, I would get more money with time, or I would try to pursue my dreams. And yeah, 30, at least for me, was a big barrier. And I'm the same age as you. I'm 32 as well. So when I did 30, it was like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Is this the life I want to have in the future? And the answer was clearly no. So I changed everything. I accepted a job with a low salary or lower salary in Gdańsk, Poland. And then I just started to go from there and ended up working now for myself and doing what I like, which is different projects. I'm organizing conferences. I have this podcast where I get to interview amazing people. I'm helping companies to go remote, and I'm doing all the things I love, and I'm really passionate about it. So I also ended up getting my own business, but just started 4 months ago. And now I'm quite happy. Now it's the second challenge, which is now we are managing businesses. Oh crap! How the hell do we do this? But yeah, we have to keep optimizing and not just be happy in the same job just because it pays you a check in the end of the month.
Exactly. And you have to trial. You really have to try different stuff. And as you said it yourself, it might take some time. It might take, different learning curves, the grind. For those of the listeners who are thinking about starting something on their own, yes, absolutely, it's not easy. In certain countries, it's a bit easier. To be honest, I'm really grateful being in Ireland because it was actually really easy and quick to set up my own organization. But if you don't try it, the only thing that you'll be thinking is, oh gosh, okay, why didn't I try it? And I'd say, yeah, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, yes, you have to start from scratch. You have to find another job, but that's not the worst, really.
Yeah, it could be worse, right? Worst case scenario, I get a job.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Oh God. One of the things that changed my life, and a lot of people have different feelings about this, but I found this when I was around 30 as well, was the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs personality test, because it helped me to know more about myself. How important do you think it's a personality test for the person or even for the recruiter side? But I use it as my person and to go where I think my personality would suit best, which is working in different projects, be more eagle eye view. So I optimize my life and my work a lot with the MBTI test. What is your opinion about this kind of personality tests?
First of all, that's really cool, and really thank you for sharing. I think that's very important. And then the second piece is you're touching one of my favorite topics. I'm a psychologist, and I do obviously believe in the positive impact of having strong self-awareness or having an awareness of your team, of your management, etc. Now, there is a wrong perception that personality tests are used to measure people, and then you put a label on the person. Oh, he or she's an introvert, we have to be careful. Or he's an extrovert, yeah, they're very outspoken and outgoing. If people are knowledgeable about how to use personality tests in the best possible way, you will avoid all of these biases. Similar to you, I feel it's incredibly helpful to understand better yourself, to understand better how you can communicate in the most effective way with other humans. So personality tests would definitely help you out in this journey. And I do like them in the recruitment process as additional assessment tool, not as the only tool, not to put people into categories, but more raising the awareness and really leveraging each other's strengths and helping us work on the areas for development that we all have, right?
Yeah, I think it can even help in the culture side of the company. So we'll now change a little bit the focus for the company side, because you do also do consulting, HR consulting for the companies, and I have 10,000 questions also on that side. So we could actually do a 4-hour podcast if we had the time to do it. But I'll try to be as straightforward as possible. For you, what are the main differences between hiring for an in-office position versus a remote position? What should you have into account in a remote position that it's not that important if you are hiring for an office, for example?
That's a really, really interesting question. And I had the exposure earlier this year to this process in regards to supporting remote hiring. And I also figured out certain stuff. I'm still learning. I'm not going to say that I know it all. And I feel really humble about that, because there are loads of stuff that you can uncover when you start hiring remotely. The one thing that I figured out for myself is the focus is shifted a lot more from the technical aspects of the roles and having a complex personality, much more to the softer skills, much more to skills such as communication and collaboration, follow-up, follow-through, self-organization, self-motivation, because I know what are the pitfalls of working remotely. So in order for me to kind of mitigate the risk, I was asking a lot more questions that are purely based on the personality traits. And now the good news is, as we spoke earlier, these are characteristics and skills that you can learn over time. It's not that you are born with it and that's it. It's not like IQ. You're born with certain IQ and sorry, Mensa, you might not get to Mensa. But if these characteristics, they can be developed, and you can give a lot of examples about good collaboration and good communication and good self-organization, even if you've been only working in an office. Now, once you're a bit more aware of what the process is, then you're able to navigate it into certain direction. But for me as a recruiter, definitely I feel the soft elements, the people connection is critical. And then establishing boundaries and establishing expectations from day one, from the first interview. And as a company owner or as an interviewer presenting a company, you should much more focus on, hey, this is how we work. We have a verbal agreement that these are the values that we have to embody in every shape or form, versus in an office space where you can get a lot more different people. In this case, you really have to be super straightforward, and that's a must. So these are the two key things that I discovered this year, actually.
One of the things you mentioned in the soft skills is the communication. And I think communication, it's 10x more important in the remote teams than it is in the office, just because you have to be fully aware of that. And you have to know how to express yourself, both in the video call, but also in writing form, because most of the communication happen in platforms like Slack or like Twist. So it's super important to know how to communicate properly and effectively. How can a recruiter find and almost vet the communication in the people applying for the job?
Purely judging based on resumes is impossible, and that's a mission impossible for sure. But you need to have a very robust process, and that should include not only interviews by other people, the human interaction. There should be different assignments, different personality tests, and whoever is, keen to go through the whole process, and I believe a lot of people should be, although we're seeing another trend as well, which is a bit more negative, but I'd say your recruitment process has to be very robust, having the right questions, having the right situations where you can put the person in, really trial them. I've heard even, and in my country, I'm originally from Bulgaria, they're actually pretty advanced. I was very, very surprised in regards to the different practices that they've set up. So they do have really interesting thing called trial, which is trial day or trial week or even trial month, which is absolutely paid, but it is kind of an opportunity for both sides to figure out whether they're happy with this setup. If they're not, bye. If they are, yes, we start, you get a full-time permanent contract or whatever the contract is, and off you go. But it's actually, again, thinking about being more creative and innovative in your approach as a company. You should totally consider different options like that.
Yeah, one thing is that's super interesting because lately I have seen some companies giving test projects to the employees, paid test projects for 1 or 2 weeks, where even if they work full time, they can take the project is adapted to the time they have available, of course. So if they're working full time, they expect 2-3 hours of commitment for 1 or 2 weeks, so they can figure out everything. Just if the connection is good with the team, how they communicate, can they get things done, which is quite important. So that's a great idea and a great tip for all the companies. Another thing after we hire, do you want to add something in this?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted
Go for
to
it.
add that it's funny enough that this is not a new practice whatsoever. It actually started years and years ago in the hospitality world, where this is still a practice. Trial days. You come and you showcase your skills as a bartender. I mean, it's funny that we are now reinventing the wheel, but in a remote environment. So we actually have to look at the past and we can figure out the future. But that's very philosophical. Go ahead with your next question.
Someone said that we don't invent anything, we just rebuild things that already exist. And they are right. After rehiring, one thing I think it's super important is the onboarding system. Onboard the new hires. How can a company build a good onboarding process for a remote employee? And I get this question a lot, and this excuse a lot for not going remote, because it's hard to onboard. How can I onboard someone that's not in the office? Do you have some tips for the onboarding process in the remote team?
The onboarding is mission critical in any organization, and unfortunately a lot of people do think that the more informal it is, the better. However, I would totally argue with that, because I feel that the first 3 months either make or break an employee. So I feel, yes, it has to be informal, but it has to be very, very well structured. So I'd say my recommendation would be definitely involve several people. Definitely start before the person has even started on the job. I mean, with the welcoming, with the information you share with them, with the expectations, with involving them in certain activities. Um, Obviously, in a remote space, you have the privilege to leverage a lot of different tools and technology and software systems, but don't forget the actual human element. So pre-recorded videos, a handwritten note that is sent in advance, small gestures like that are actually building up an incredible awe and respect on the side of the candidate. And we try to automate everything. You mentioned that earlier, but the onboarding has to be a perfect combination and balance between technology and humans.
Yes. How can we put human connection in this onboarding? Is it through live calls in the first week? It's the mix of the video that you spoke, and I 100% agree, with some tutor or some friends that you'll find inside the company, like a buddy system. What are some ways that you are seeing to build this inside the company?
You definitely nailed it here. I think a combination between having a buddy program, as I said, it has to start before the actual first day of the person. So really making these introductions at earlier stages, inviting people for virtual coffee, and catch-ups like that, sending them nice little gifts. If that is planned accordingly, and every week there is different kind of element, different activities, something new, something fun, something exciting, something that would really embed them in your culture, and they would feel included, because the level of inclusivity, the diversity piece is there. but the level of inclusivity and belonging is very difficult to be built properly. So you really need to showcase that to the whole team. If you're bringing people from different cultures, how do you make sure that they feel super incorporated from the beginning? How do you position them? All of these bits and pieces are stuff that you need to consider way, way, way in advance.
Totally agree. I just have two more questions because we have to wrap up around here. The first one, then the first one after the second, the first one is you work with companies way before they went remote. So you have a lot of experience in HR, even way before remote work was a thing. But now you see these companies embracing remote work. What is the impact that you are seeing in the companies while embracing remote work, both on the business side, but also, and more important, even on the employer branding side in attracting the best talent in the market?
Well, things are changing constantly, and I'd say what the practices have been in the early 2000s are incredibly different to the 90s and to the 80s and to the 70s. So it's absolutely normal to have change and embrace change. And in the end of the day, those companies who don't embrace it and stay rigid and stay with the old school, narrow-minded thinking, they won't really get the top candidates, in all honesty, because we need to be mindful of also what are the preferences of the generations that are now working together. And for first time we have 5 generations working together because the lifespan has increased in comparison to, let's say, the 50s. So what does that mean for us? Asking each other this question, regardless of whether you're in HR, in operations, in marketing, in sales, in finance, in engineering, this question is equally valid for all of these different teams and different people. So my recommendation is, okay, consider what are the traits of Generation Z, because millennials were the big issue 5, 10 years ago. We're grand, we're perfect. We just want work-life balance now. Generation Z is the ones you should be worried about because they want purpose, they want impact, they want social awareness, they want to change the world, they want to be eco-friendly. Go deal with that. Good luck.
I think that almost answers my next question, which is where do you see the job market evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And we have Generation Z coming into play already.
Yeah.
And we have the next generation that we have no idea, but this new generation that are coming after, they grew up with TikTok. So they grew up making video, they grew up creating, they grew up in the creative environment. How do you see the job market evolving in the next 5 to 10 years to embrace not only the Generation Z that it's already here, but also this next generation that grew up creating things?
Yeah, they're called the glass or alpha generation, and it's scary. It's scary because these are 2 or 3 year old kids that are swiping on your TV because that's all they understand. I mean, it's I would totally say that this would disrupt tremendously the job market, and it's not just AI. And everyone talks about AI and machine learning. It's not just that. It's the whole process, the whole mindset, the whole lifespan, and the perception of work as it is, employment as it is. This would change brutally in the next 10 years. And I don't know how, to be honest. I try to be positive. I don't believe that the robots will rule us. I genuinely don't think that would happen unless we do some bad stuff, or bad people do bad stuff, better said. But I'd say we really need to incorporate the humanity back to the world. And a lot of the people who talk about future of work, they are not excluding, and they're actually putting a lot of focus on things like empathy, like active listening, collaboration on a different level. And we can really involve the computers in that. We can involve the smart tools in that. But the real struggle would be, okay, how can we change what kids learn? How can we change what these kids are exposed to? And this change is already here. It's just a matter of getting it into the right shape and form.
Totally agree. It will be a fun future, definitely. And we are here to see it for the first time. You don't think that it will be so much fun, but I think it will, because this generation, they are all creators and we are not used to. We are used to people that come from school and they say whatever you say to them. And these guys, they don't care. They are creating stuff every single day. And I think it will be challenging, but I think we also have a new generation of entrepreneurs coming. And that is really exciting for people like me. So we are wrapping up. Where can people find more about you and your company?
Of course, of course. Well, as you can imagine, I'm always on LinkedIn. That's one one place. If you type my name, thank God I'm very unique. So once you type down my name, Radina, you'll probably find me on some of the top results. I would love to connect with everyone. I'm always open for that, as long as there is a bit of personalization and it's not just a random request. My company is Vox Advisory, so this is my brand. So if you want to connect on a professional level as well, feel free to start from LinkedIn and then we'll take it from there. I think that's the easiest way.
Awesome. Radina, thank you so much for your time. We tried a couple of times to record this interview. We finally did it. It was amazing. It was a huge pleasure to have you on the podcast. And I know we will meet soon, hopefully in Lisbon, if not in Ireland. And thank you so much for your time.
Likewise, Gonzalo, all the very best in not only 2020, but the whole next decade.
Working hard for that. Thank you, everyone, for listening, guys. Go for the show notes to get everything. And we are wrapping up here. Bye-bye. And that's a wrap. I told you that the content was going to be gold. Either if you are looking for jobs or just hiring for your company, Radina can definitely help you with her insane knowledge about people and hiring. So feel free to go to her website at vox-advisory.com or look for her on LinkedIn. It's definitely Radina's favorite platform. Next week, we have an amazing new guest, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, leave us a good review, and I can't wait to see you next week here at the Remote Work Movement podcast. Bye-bye.